What's up, Dragon Brood? Today, we are going to talk about some more quite valuable things in your collection that you just may not know about. Now, again, we're not talking about things that are necessarily worth $50, $100, whatever. This is helping people find value in their collection of things they already own. So a lot of these are going to be bulk rares, commons, uncommons, generally, that you already have in your collection that are probably worth money that you just didn't know about. Now, that being said, today particularly, we are looking at commons and uncommons because we're talking about Pauper, which is the format of commons, or the commoners, or maybe, I don't know, that makes it sound very bad. But what people don't know is a format like Pauper actually pushes up a lot of the prices on these commons that you just kind of have sitting around that you probably didn't know about. So hopefully you're going to learn a little bit of something today. Let's get into it. Now, the first card we want to get into today is Lightning Bolt. And this is one you're probably looking at and going like, Lightning Bolt? That's actually worth something. Believe it or not, even the cheap Lightning Bolts are like $2 to $250. And that's kind of surprising in a way because they've been printed a lot. I mean, they were in the first, like 6 core sets or something. And then you also had some printed in special products. We've had secret layers, we've had some foil ones and some special sets. Like pretty much every way you could print a lightning bolt, they're worth money. Now, I will say the ones that are from some of those special sets and the secret layers and stuff tend to be worth a bit more than you would expect. And that's a good thing. But one of the things that helps the lightning bolt's price isn't just Pauper. It's actually even used in other formats, and that keeps it high as well. Now, occasionally you may see one show up in Commander, but it's not really that. It's the 60 card formats that are also helping lightning bolts out. But this is one of those cards that I think when you're going through collections and you're really thinking like, oh, well, obviously there's millions of lightning bolts in the world, these aren't worth anything, you'd be terribly wrong. Yeah, a couple of bucks a piece. This means that when you put them on people's buy lists, a lot of times you're going to be able to get between 50 cents and a buck, maybe even $1.25, depending on the buy list you're selling to. So this is a good way to make a few extra dollars to cover some shipping on a sale package if you choose to do that. If not, at least stick them in your binder and you got some good trade fodder for possibly a new player who hasn't had a chance to acquire lightning bolts yet. Now, this next one is a card that, unless you play Pauper for the most part, you've probably forgotten about this card. But Submerge. This card's really good in the sense that it can give you a potential free bounce spell, which is kind of awesome. But realistically, you're going to be paying full, 5 mana for it, I think the spell is. Now, that being said, it makes a good sideboard card, and that's always awesome. But you would be surprised to know that this lowly uncommon from Nemesis is actually worth about $6. Yeah, that's a thing. And this is one that kind of snuck up on me even when I was doing some research on various cards. So don't be shocked when you see cards, even from sets like Nemesis that really doesn't draw a lot of fanfare. A lot of these in-between cards that are role players or very key cards in these other formats can be driving these prices. This is one of the reasons when I put up my other video, and maybe I'll remember to link it here, about why it's harder for people to make money from collections, because there's stuff like this that you don't know about that are actually going to generate you some dollars. So yeah, this is another one. You can go through those old cards that probably got donated to you because these were sitting in boxes forever that nobody cared about. Well, here's some money for you. All right, this one is a little bit sneaky, but Solana Ledgewalker. Now, this is one, again, not worth a ton. You're going to be looking at probably 50 to 75 cents, depending on which version you have. It's only got 4 printings, so it's not a ton out there. But again, when we're talking about these special formats, this is a card that's used a lot. Like it has hexproof, so it's very hard to kill. So if you want to load it up with enchantments or something, that's always a benefit. But it's also very hard to block, which can also lend itself to being played in quite a few different decks. So this card overall is a very useful card, but it's one that could easily be overlooked, and it's one that probably when you're going through bulk piles, you didn't even think twice about it. But yeah, Solana Ledgewalker is actually really good. It's in a lot of competitive decks in these formats, and there's plenty of them out there. Now, that being said, I believe it comes from Guild Pack, so it's not the most popular set, for finding cards for value, but there are some in there as well. And we may even have to do part of the series where we just take sets as a whole and just kind of say which cards from these sets are worth stuff. I think that would probably help people too. But that's time for another video. But for this one, go check out those Alana Ledgewalkers you have, because, you know, may only be 50 cents a card, but that's still something for a common that was probably just sitting around in a box for you. All right, this next one, we actually have a very good and interesting card that's very old, and we're talking about Dust to Dust. This is a card a lot of people, I think, don't think is worth something because, well, I mean, the Dark is one of those sets that's old, but there's plenty out there, so you're not really going to be looking for it to be of value, right? We come across these all the time. And I believe it was also printed in 5th edition, so there's quite a few out there, and there's only been a couple of special set versions, I think, somewhere along the line. But that being said, this card still goes for somewhere between $3 and $4, depending on where you pick them up at. So this is another card that has some very specialized usage. Now, it is very particular when you want it, right? It's exiled to target artifacts. But when you want it, when you need it, this is the card for you. And it's only 3 mana, so it's cheap to cast. Fits a lot of what decks want. Now, it's a great sideboard card. Not often are you going to play it main deck, unless the metagame calls for it, of course. So it's not like there is a big demand for it. However, because they were printed so long ago, and I think it's been a while since we've even had a printing of this card, that's one of the things that's helping its value. Now, for some reason, I don't know, let's say this shows up in Kamigawa or New Capenna, or heck, even later this year in the Brothers War, you'll probably see this price come down on this card, which honestly, now that I think about it, the Brothers War could be a place to print something like this because it's 2 people that are artificers and this thing destroys artifacts, so maybe. Not saying it is, but you know, sometimes you gotta try to connect the dots to make those predictions. But between now and then, it is possible this card could get up over $4 pretty regularly in a lot of places if we don't see a reprint. So yeah, this is one you've probably seen a lot of and had no idea was worth anything, but now you know. All right, this next one is one that, if you really analyze the card, it kind of tells you that it's worth something, right? If you can get a free spell that also removes something, that's usually pretty good in the game of Magic. On top of that, when you're talking about formats like Pauper, where there aren't a lot of these options to be used, well, then you really dive in and say, okay, now this card becomes even more valuable because it's part of an exclusive class of cards that doesn't even really exist here. The card we're talking about is Snuff Out. This is one of the best black removal cards in the format of Pauper, and it goes for about $4.50-ish, so that's actually a pretty good ticket for a common. And here's the crazy part, is this card, to my knowledge, has only had one other printing, and that's been in the dual deck Garrick and Liliana, I think. So there's not a whole lot of these out there, which is another thing that's helping this price. Now, I could see this possibly being reprinted in a Commander product or Commander Legends or anything else coming out throughout the year. So I wouldn't hold on to that too highly, but it is a thing to know, at least for now, that this card actually still is worth something. So if there's a chance for you to unload them, go for it. The reason I say that is this is one of those cards that could fit almost anywhere. Now, I don't think it's necessarily one that they'll put in a regular standard legal booster, but it could appear almost anywhere else without hurting those formats or products. So take that for what it is. But for now, yeah, go cash in on your Snuff Outs, because you probably didn't know they were worth that much. Alright, this one don't really want to make a big deal out of, but Ethereal Armor. It really only goes in 1 or 2 types of decks, but wanted to bring it up because it's a card that there's not a lot of printings of out there, and it goes for about 40 cents. Now again, we're not talking about a ton of money, but hell, people go out of their way to sell bulk rares that are like 7 to 8 cents on most people's buy list. So that's a thing. But realistically, this card actually could get you a small chunk of change. I mean, and again, some people are looking and say, why are you telling people about a 40-cent card? But it's worth like, I don't know, 6 rares that stores would buy. So, I mean, come on. Like, seriously though, this is actually a really useful card for the decks that want it. And again, we're talking about a card that doesn't have a lot of printings. And it's not necessarily the type of card that makes sense to print in a lot of places, unless we get a commander deck that is focused on enchantments. Then maybe this becomes a thing, and then you'd probably see this drop all the way down to just being a 5 to 10 cent card. But in the meantime, 40 cents on your Ethereal Armors. Alright, and we're going to wrap this video up talking about Chainer's Edict. This is a card from originally Torment, but it's had, I believe, 4 booster printings. So there's not a lot out there, but enough. But the card is highly sought after. It's just a quality removal card. It doesn't target, especially when people are playing things like the other card we talked about, like Solana Ledgewalker, right? This is one of those really helpful cards. It's very cheap to cast. It's got flashback. It's just quality. And like I said, without there being that many actual printings, this card still goes for a pretty penny, to the tune of about $3.50 all the way up to $5, depending on which version you're looking for or trying to sell. So this is another card that, again, when you're talking about these specialized formats and you're looking for cards to do unique things, there's not a lot that do this type of thing. Like, there's some cards that are cheap that, you know, make your opponent sacrifice a creature or whatever, but there's not one that gives you a second use of it. And that's actually really strong. So yeah, another card that if you just go down these Pauper lists, you will find so many cards that are actually valuable, partly because of that format itself. Now, there are some other factors on this, but those are the big ones. So yeah, if you didn't know Chainer's Edict was worth that much, up to $5, well, now you know. And the truth is, it might stay at that price because I don't know where they really want to print this type of card. Not to say they can't, because, you know, you can print whatever you want, but because it has an extra ability on it, I don't know if they're going to put it in a product where that keyword isn't also present on other things. And that, I think, is what's going to be the limiting factor to this being reprinted. I mean, heck, we had a couple of times where we've reintroduced Flashback and we didn't reprint Chainer's Edict. So there's a chance we're just not going to see a reprint for the foreseeable future. So these are one of those cards you can get your hands on and probably still get pretty good money for even a year from now. All right, so that wraps up this episode of Hidden Gems. So in our 4th installment, I feel like we're covering a lot of ground now. We're talking about different formats. We've talked about non-card products. Actually, I also wondered, would y'all be interested in seeing some things that maybe are unique that you don't know exist at all because they weren't given away except for anything to Wizards employees? That's a thing we can cover, though those don't really fit the Hidden Gems things. That's just a cool thing to talk about. But yeah, there's so many cards out there and so many non-card products out there that people own that are worth a ton of money. So don't just devalue your collections out there. Don't assume that you can't get that card you want, because you totally can. Like, I get it. You look at a card for your commander deck and you're like, that's like $25. I just don't have it. You would be amazed. Like in today's video, you could, if you had one of every card, you'd be pretty close to the way of getting you one of those cards that you're missing, right? So it doesn't take a lot. You know, if you go through these videos, this whole series, like all the cards we talked about, you would be surprised how much value is often just given to you when people donate collections or are getting rid of cards. Like, there's so much there to be had. So don't undersell yourself in your collection. It's probably worth a lot more than you think. As always, remember to check the memberships here on the channel. It's one way you can support me for as little as 99 cents. And we do have benefits, so check those out. Also, even if you don't think you can do that, please remember to like this video, share it with your friends who would be interested or could use the information, and remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell and choose all notifications. That stuff really helps, and I really mean it on these types of videos because they're likely to get fewer views, so every time you do that, it helps push this video higher and further. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.